Alright guys, Anthony coming to you live right now as we DIY one for all, and of course converting the snapper mower from manual start to electric start. Well, it currently has just a regular kill switch, and I'm going to take the switch off right now as the first step in getting the switch changed out to a three-way switch, snapper switch, as we get this thing converted. So let me go ahead and take the switch out right now. Alright, comes right out. Just gonna disconnect this in the back, and currently it's one wire is going to the ignition coil and one to the ground engine block. So I'm just gonna take this off, just in case someone is wondering how you can tell. It's just a kill switch. It just has two prongs right here. One is for ground and one is for the ignition coil. Alright, so this is how you can tell the difference between a switch that will actually start the engine versus just a regular kill switch. You don't want to use a switch like this to start the engine. You always want to have a switch that will turn, and then when the engine starts, it automatically will turn back. Otherwise you could mess your starter up. So this is just a regular kill switch, alright, for those who are wondering. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and disconnect the old kill switch wires from the engine block as well as the ignition coil. Alright, that's off. Now I have to take off the kill wire off that connects to the ignition coil. And for that, just need a little wrench. This is the kill wire that goes to the engine right here. Alright, so now I can actually take this out. These are the two wires that connect it to the kill switch. Alright, here's the new ignition switch I'm going to install. I just removed the kill switch, and this is going to be a switch that connects to the solenoid as well as the battery. And so I'm going to go ahead and install this switch right now. And this is an aftermarket switch, and you can really tell it's an aftermarket switch. It's not the same feel as the OEM snapper switch, but I believe it works. Or let's hope it's going to work well, right? I think it's going to work just fine. So I'm just going to tighten this by hand right now. I'll later come back and tighten this with my spanner, but for right now that should do it right there. So now I'm going to go ahead and install the solenoid in the back of the mower. Alright, well, this is a solenoid I'm going to use right here, and I've just got to find a suitable place on the mower to mount this solenoid. It didn't have one previously, or if it had one, it may have been removed, and I don't actually see where a solenoid was mounted on this mower previously. So I'm going to have to drill a hole probably right here, and I'm going to mount the solenoid there. And this particular solenoid, if you look at it closely, this wire here actually goes to the positive side of the battery, and this wire engages the solenoid. Right here, this little metal piece here, the frame or the part that screws onto the mower, is actually the ground connection. One of these goes to the positive side of the battery, and the other side goes to the starter. Whenever the ignition switch is turned on, it's going to send 12 volts to this terminal here, and then this ground connection will cause, of course, the solenoid to be activated. Then it's going to actually close these two connections right here. So you're going to have 12 volts going to the starter, and the starter should rotate just fine. So I'm going to actually mount this solenoid right here. I'm going to drill a hole, so I'll come right back shortly. Alright, I think I found a nicer spot for my solenoid. I'm actually going to drill a hole right here, over here, and mount the solenoid just like that. I think that will work just fine. So I'm going to get drilling right now, get my drill set up, and we'll go to work. And I'll successfully made a hole right there, and I'm going to put the solenoid right there, and I think that will work out just fine. I'm going to get some sandpaper. I'm not going to actually sand off this area right here because you want the solenoid to have a good ground connection. You want to ensure your ground connection is very, very good. If you don't have a ground, your solenoid won't work. Good ground is always important. All right, let's get the solenoid on. The solenoid has been installed. I just got to tighten it just a little bit more. It should be pretty good right there. I need right now, I need to hook up the wire to the solenoid. Then I've got to hook up the starter, the battery, which I don't have yet. I have to purchase a battery. I have a starter in my shed on another engine, which I'm going to take off and put on this mower right here. So we're making great progress. Okay, now I'm just going to test the ignition switch to ensure that it was wired correctly. As you see, I've completed the wiring right there. And these are the wires here that I'm going to connect to the battery and the solenoid, as well as the magneto. I didn't want to go out and buy new wires. That's the whole purpose of DIY projects, is to use what you have. These two wires here will be my positive cable. I know I have a green wire and a white wire, but as I've said before, I just use what I have at my disposal. This white wire right here will go to my battery, and this green wire will go to the solenoid. This black wire here will go to the magneto. In effect, when the switch is turned all the way to the right, this green wire and this white wire should connect. If the engine is in the off position, then this wire should actually kill the engine, because it's going to connect to my magneto. You're going to have three connections. You're going to have the M for magneto. That means that this wire that comes from this right here should actually go to the ignition coil, okay? And the B, that wire should go to the battery. And the S, that wire should go to the starter. So those are your three wires here. B terminal on this switch should actually go to this terminal right here. All right. The S terminal on the switch needs to go to this small terminal here. This is also a positive terminal. Whenever the ignition switch is in the on position, just like here, whenever it's turned all the way over here to the right, then what's going to happen, it's going to join the B and the S terminal. I'm just going to do a test for connectivity to ensure that these two wires are connected together whenever I turn the switch all the way to the right. So let's just turn on my meter right now. I'm going to put in the connectivity setting. All right, so right now it says in the connectivity setting, and there's no beep right now. But whenever I turn the switch on all the way to the right, I should actually hear a beep. Let's just do that right now. Hear that? Okay, so that switch is actually working. It's working just fine, and it's connected properly. And that's what should happen. And when that happens, it just send 12 volts to my starter right here, and the engine will start. So now I'm going to check to ensure that the magneto wire here, which is the black wire, is connected properly. And with the magneto wire, the only time you should hear a beep whenever you do a resistance check between your magneto wire and the ground is when the switch is in the off position. If the switch is not in the off position, then there should not be a connection between your magneto and ground. All right, because if there's any at all a connection between the magneto wire and ground, the engine will turn off. Okay, so here you can see I have the black wire connected to one lead of my connectivity tester right here, and now I'm just going to connect the red wire to ground to any part of the mower, right, actually, and the switch is in the off position. And with any ignition switch or kill switch, if the switch is in the off position, then the engine should turn off. All right, if the engine continues to run, then there's no connection between ground and the magneto wire. Okay guys, I'm just going to connect the wires from the ignition switch to the solenoid. This wire here, I know it's green, but it's actually going to positive terminal right here on the solenoid, and this white wire is going to the positive terminal of the battery. And whenever the ignition switch is turned all the way on to the right, then it should actually join these two wires here, and 12 volts should go from the solenoid to the starter. So let me just put on these connections right now. Let's give it a good grip. Scrimping it down real good. Make sure we have a good connection. This should suffice for right now. This one goes to the big connector right here on the solenoid. Alright. Okay, so this is the M terminal right here, or the magneto terminal on my switch right there. Okay, and this is the wire we tested earlier, and this will actually connect to the ignition coil coming from the engine. This is a kilo wire here that comes from the engine, and it goes to the engine block. And I'm going to put on this connector here. When the ignition switch is in the off position, the engine should actually turn off because it will be grounded out. So the only thing we need right now, we need our battery, which I don't have yet. This is a charger wire coming from the engine. And if you notice, there's a diode right here. That's the positive terminal. The diode converts the AC coming from the alternator to DC. This will also connect to the positive terminal of the battery. So we'll do that later on. Okay. Okay, this is the starter that I got off the 13.5 horsepower engine that I got for $25 from a guy. So I'm going to put the starter on this tractor, and in that I only paid $25 for the entire engine, and the entire purpose of getting the engine was just to get the starter. I think the engine is good, but right, I need to get this snapper mower converted to electric start. So I'm going to use the starter, and later on I can put another starter on that other engine and test it and see if it works. Alright, the starter has been installed. Should be on there pretty good right now. Alright, we're all wired up right now. When the switch is turned on, it will send 12 volts to this connector right here, which will in turn close these two big terminals right here, and then send 12 volts to my starter, which will start the engine. So the only thing I'm missing right now, if you look at this, this is a charging wire right here coming from the alternator. Notice there's a diode in it, which indicates this is the positive side, 12 volts DC, and I don't have a connector for this right now. But I've installed the starter right there. The wire is connected. So to really test this thing out right now, the only thing I'm really missing right now is a battery, which I plan to take a battery out of my other mower just for testing. So I'm going to get that battery out. I may change this wire right here. This is an old wire that came with the mower. I'm going to take off this wire and put on a brand new wire here on the, and ground it to the engine block, of course, and then we can do a good test. But pretty much all the essentials are in place to make this engine start, except of course a battery, which I need to get. But yes guys, this is how things are right now. The transformation has indeed almost complete, converting this mower from manual start to electric start, and I'm still going to leave the manual start capability there in case someone's interested in it. Some people like the pull, you know, they still like to have the pull start as a backup, so I will leave it right there, and I personally like it as well. Okay guys, well, I ran into a little issue here. I don't have the female connector to connect this wire here, this charging wire, to my battery. So what I did, I looked around and I found an old computer power supply that I don't need anymore, and I think this was for a previous computer I had probably 15 years ago. So I took a saw and I actually cut off part of this 12 volt connector here. This is now what used on old ID hard drives, and I took this piece out right here. Yep, and I think it will work very well right here. I could go and buy a connector for this, but the guy's about 15 minutes from my location, and of course, why spend money if I don't have to, right? That's the whole point of DIY. We try to find ways to save money. So I'm actually going to use this connector right here, and I think this will work very, very well for my application. And then I'm going to put a jumper here and connect from here to the 12-volt portion of the battery so the battery can be charged. Check that out, guys. It's nice and snug on there, and I think this will serve the purpose just fine. I'm going to go ahead and connect this wire to the positive terminal of my battery, and this should be the charging wire. Whenever the engine is running, the battery will be charged from this wire right here. So yep, not a DIY victory right here. Didn't have to spend extra money to buy a female connector. Use what I got, right? That's always a good thing. Well, I've completed all the wiring right now. All the connections are in place, and just the negative terminal for the battery, the positive terminal for the battery. So the only thing I'm missing right now is the battery. I think it should work out just fine. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you next time.